I moved back into my childhood home last year. I was 33 and needed to care for my mom. I thought maybe being there would bring me peace and inspiration again. The house had that familiar charm, even with its old, cracked sidewalks and faded wallpaper. Memories flooded my mind, especially during family dinners. It felt nice to be back. On my second night, I heard a faint tapping at my window. I thought it was just the wind, or maybe a branch. I shrugged it off and went to bed. I kept telling myself I was being silly. Maybe I just needed to adjust to living alone again. But a few nights later, the tapping turned into soft murmurs. They echoed through the hallways. My heart raced every time I heard them, but I kept convincing myself there was nothing to fear. I started exploring the house more. The more I looked, the more uneasy I felt. One afternoon, I browsed through old family photographs. I found a picture of a child I didn't recognize. The kid was standing too close to my mother. The face felt wrong, and I couldn't place it. I shivered. It was like an old secret wrapped in a memory that didn't belong to me. I felt tension creeping in, like something was waiting for me to uncover as the nights went by. Shadows crept into the corners of my vision. Everything seemed darker. I doubted my mind. Was I really seeing these things, or was it just stress? I sat in the living room one evening. It was warm out, but I felt cold. I knew something wasn't right. Then, one night, I heard a soft whisper calling my name. I froze. It felt like my heart stopped for a moment. I turned toward the sound, but there was no one there. I stepped back, confused and scared. My thoughts raced. What was happening? My connection to those old photographs haunted me. Who was the child? And why did it feel like they were watching me? I felt my grip on reality slipping. I didn't know what to think anymore. Then came the night when I gathered my courage and asked aloud, "Who are you?" The whispers stopped immediately. A heavy silence filled the room, and that familiar tapping started again. I tried to ignore it, but I felt something lurking in the darkness. I couldn't shake the feeling that the house held secrets. I walked through each room, and I felt different eyes upon me. It was unnerving. I began questioning my memories. It was like I was spiraling into a dark tunnel. And then, I remembered those photographs. As I looked at them again, I felt watched. I realized there were things in that house I wasn't meant to uncover. I felt a heaviness in my chest. I wondered if anything would ever make sense again. What was waiting for me in the shadows? I woke up that next morning feeling unrest. The night had been long, filled with whispers and shifting shadows. I decided I needed answers, so I stumbled downstairs, my mind swirling with thoughts. The house felt alive, its creaks echoing memories I wasn't sure I wanted to remember. After breakfast, I resolved to talk to the neighbor. She had lived next door for years and might know something about the house or its past. I approached her garden, where she was pruning her roses. The bright colors seemed out of place against my dark mood. "Hi, Mrs. Thompson," I called out, trying to muster a friendly smile. "Can I ask you something about this house?" Her hands paused mid-snip, and she looked up at me. There was a glimmer of recognition deep in her eyes, one that made me uneasy. "Oh, your childhood home," she said slowly. "What a place. I remember your family well." I hesitated. "I found some old photographs, and there's a child I don't recognize." She cut me off, her gaze distant. "Not everything is as it seems in that house," she warned. "There have been stories, you know. Strange happenings." "Like what?" I pressed, feeling a chill creep down my spine. She hesitated, her hands shaking slightly as she set her pruning shears down. "They say things happen at night. Shadows that shouldn't be there. Voices. Children laughing when there are no children. It's best to leave the past buried." "Children laughing?" I echoed, remembering that eerie feeling I had when I first saw the strange photograph. But Mrs. Thompson wouldn't say any more. She seemed far too anxious and clammed up, ending our conversation abruptly. I walked away feeling frustrated. The shadows of my past were beginning to weigh heavily on my mind. Later that evening, I sat in the living room once more, staring at the old photographs. I turned over the one with the unknown child. As I sat there, the room grew colder. Suddenly, the air felt charged, and I heard that gentle tapping again at the window, punctuating the stillness. Against my better judgment, I rose to check it. My heart raced. The dusk light barely illuminated the empty yard, but something drew me near. I peered through the glass. The garden was empty, but then I froze. There, under the large oak tree, was a small figure. A child. The same child from the photograph. I blinked, hoping it was just my imagination. But when I leaned closer, the figure stood there, staring up at me. A grin spread across their face, and they raised their hand, beckoning me. Panic surged through me. I stumbled back. My mind raced. Could this be the ghost of a child? I turned to grab my phone from the table, but when I looked back, the figure was gone. In that moment, everything felt wrong. I realized the house was no longer just home. It was a well of secrets I was begging to uncover. Just as I began to gather my resolve, I heard another whisper, this one clearer and more urgent. Come play. I felt ice run through my veins. Who was calling me? I needed to know, but I was terrified of what might happen next. I stood frozen in the living room, a strange mix of fear and curiosity washing over me. The soft whisper echoed in my mind, taunting me. I had to find out what was happening, but the idea of venturing outside gave me pause. What if that figure was something more than just a child? After what felt like an eternity of pacing, I grabbed my jacket and headed outside. The chill in the air wrapped around me, making every step feel heavier. The yard loomed ahead, shadowed by the trees. The oak tree stood tall, its branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. I approached the tree, my heart pounding. What if someone or something was really there? I looked around, half expecting to see the child reappear, but the yard was empty and silent. I called out, "Hello?" Only the wind answered, rustling leaves above me. It felt ridiculous to be standing there, calling into the night, but I felt drawn to the spot. I knelt down, brushing aside fallen leaves, hoping for any clue about the child. That's when I noticed it, a small, weathered toy laying half buried in the dirt. I picked it up and inspected it closely. It was a tiny wooden horse, its paint chipped and faded. A sense of nostalgia washed over me, but it quickly twisted into fear. Who had left this here? Was it connected to the child? I turned it over, and that's when I noticed something carved into the bottom, a name. Ella. The name sent chills down my spine. I glanced back at the house, suddenly feeling vulnerable in the dark. The whispers returned, echoing around me, a gentle melody promising secrets. Come play. My instincts screamed for me to go inside, but something else pulled me toward the oak tree. I felt it. A connection. I recalled Mrs. Thompson's warning and forced myself to shove the toy into my pocket. I stood, wavering, torn between leaving and uncovering the truth. Just then, there was a crack of a branch behind me. I spun around, expecting to find someone or something lurking in the shadows. Nothing. Just the emptiness of the yard. Taking a deep breath, I steeled myself. I needed more answers. I rushed back inside and grabbed my old journal, the one I'd used to record memories from my childhood. My heart raced as I flipped through the pages, searching for any mention of Ella or any clues that might explain the strange occurrences in the house. Just as I reached the final entry from my childhood, I froze. There, in my own handwriting, was a mention of a friend named Ella. It was vague, a fleeting memory of games played in the yard, laughter shared. But it was the last line that turned my blood cold. I promised I would always play with her. Suddenly, the lights flickered, the air thickened, and I felt the room shift. I could almost hear whispers, no, laughter filling the space around me. I dropped the journal, clutching my head. Then, a sharp knock echoed through the house, resonating from the front door. My breath quickened. I looked at the journal on the floor, a thousand thoughts racing through my mind. Was Ella trying to reach me? Who was at the door? I hesitated, a knot forming in my stomach. Should I answer it? I took a step toward the door, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. Every instinct told me to ignore it, to hide, but I felt an unrelenting pull to satisfy my curiosity. I reached for the doorknob, hesitation hanging in the air like a thick fog. Who is it? I called out, but my voice cracked. I couldn't help thinking of the whispers. The name. Ella. Let me in, came a voice on the other side. It was small, almost childlike. My blood ran cold. Who are you? I asked, trying to sound braver than I felt. Please, the voice begged, trembling with emotion. I need you. The plea tugged at my heart, conflicting with every warning I'd ever heard about not opening the door to strangers. I paused, weighing my options. More knocking followed, urgent and insistent. I'm scared, the voice cried, and the desperation behind those words fueled my fear. Something wasn't right. Wait, I shouted, moments away from pulling the door open. What if it was a trap? But the thought of a child outside alone froze my blood. Finally, sanity broke through. I grabbed my phone, ready to call for help, when I glanced back at the journal on the floor. If Ella was connected to this, I needed more information. I took a deep breath and decided to turn on the living room light. Turning on the lights didn't help. The glow was harsh against the shadows, and the whispering seemed to grow louder, echoing from every corner of the room. My grip tightened on the phone, and I felt trapped between the door and whatever shadows lurked behind me. Then, the front door creaked. It wasn't me, it opened on its own, slowly, revealing nothing but darkness. The air turned colder, and with it came a haunting sense of unnatural presence. "Ella?" I called, my voice barely above a whisper. That's when I saw a flash of movement in the doorway. I squinted, trying to make sense of the figure emerging from the darkness. The shape wasn't just childlike. It was somehow familiar. My heart raced as recognition hit me. It was a small girl, her hair cascading down her shoulders, but it was wrong. Her eyes held an unsettling depth, like she knew something I didn't. The atmosphere thickened, wrapping around me as I realized the truth. "Ella," I breathed, horrified and captivated. With a small, hesitant smile, she reached out a hand, beckoning me to come closer. The whispers turned to laughter again, but it had a sinister edge, filling the air with uncertainty. My mind spun as I battled thoughts of fear and familiarity. "Play with me," she said sweetly. "God, no," I gasped, the reality crashing down. I stumbled back, unsure if I should run or confront this apparition. Had I truly called her by bringing the journal back into my life? Suddenly, just as quickly as her appearance, the girl disappeared into the shadows, leaving behind only an echo of her laughter. The door hung open, the night winds howling through it. Then I knew I wasn't alone in the house. Someone else was there. I felt it, as weightless fingers caressed my neck. I turned around slowly, dread pooling in my stomach. My instincts screamed whatever was lurking was drawing closer. "What are you?" I whispered, and the answer came. I could feel a presence behind me, cold and dark. Whatever waited had no intentions of answering my question. I needed to find out what Ella had meant. But time was running out. I had to find a way to escape, and fast. I barely had time to process what was happening before I felt a rush of wind, slamming the door shut behind me. My heart raced as panic settled in. "I have to get out," I muttered under my breath. It was too quiet, too still. The air felt heavy, pressing against me like a weight. The laughter echoed in my ears, and I stumbled backward, tripping over the coffee table. I hit the ground hard and scrambled to my feet. Shadows flickered, moving in ways that didn't make sense. I had to find a way to escape this nightmare. I quickly checked my phone, the small light illuminating my fingers. No signal. Of course, there wouldn't be. A feeling of dread washed over me. This place was cut off not just physically, but from reality. My mind raced. There had to be something I could do. I turned toward the back of the house, hoping to find another exit. Each step felt like a fight against an unseen force. The hallway stretched in front of me, dark and twisted. My instincts told me to run, but I forced myself to move slowly, scanning every corner. I reached the kitchen and felt the weight in my chest lift slightly. There had to be a window I could open. I rushed to the glass panes, hands trembling. They were locked tight, just like my thoughts. "Come on," I hissed, yanking on the latch. It wouldn't budge. Panic surged again. I backtracked to the living room, desperate for another option. As I crossed the threshold, I froze. The journal sat in the center of the floor, taunting me with the last memories of Ella. She was somehow tied to all of this, and I needed to figure out how. Just touching it made my skin tingle. Out of instinct, I flipped it open. Words blurred together, but a few phrases stood out against the madness. Lost, found, calling. The entries were fragments of a story I struggled to piece together. Something about a game. A ritual. I shuddered, memories clawing at my mind. Ella had been playing a game, hadn't she? Was that really why she'd come to me? A sudden crash broke my train of thought. I whirled around, the fears slamming into me like a wave. I was not alone. The shadows stirred, a darker silhouette emerging from the edges of the room. It moved toward me with purpose, the air growing colder as it advanced. "Ella," I screamed, not sure if I was pleading or commanding. The figure paused. The laughter returned, mingling with Ella's voice. "You have to play?" "No," I yelled, backing away. "I don't want to play." But the figure didn't relent. It lunged forward, and instinct kicked in. I dove toward the front door, slamming my body against it. I had to get out. Had to escape the game they were playing. The door wouldn't budge, locked by the unseen forces at play. With desperation building, I turned back to the journal, hoping for a revelation. That was when I saw a familiar drawing at the bottom of the page. A child's scribble, a circle with a line through it. I knew that drawing. As if without choice, I began to back away from the images. Then, everything went dark. The lights flickered and died, plunging me into shadows thick with dread. I was swallowed whole, lost in the depths of it all, and I could hear the whispers ramping up again, the faint echo of Ella's voice still calling my name. At that moment, I realized I wasn't just in physical danger. I was tangled in something deeper, and my name was part of a story I didn't want to be a part of. The darkness enveloped me, thick and suffocating. I couldn't move, my body felt frozen, trapped in the void surrounding me. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing the shadows to retreat, but the whispers grew louder. They echoed all around me, a chorus of taunts, pleading voices. Play with us. I blinked my eyes open, and a dim light flickered above me. It illuminated a figure standing on the other side of the room, a girl, no older than 12. Her face was pale, wide eyes staring directly at mine. I recognized her immediately. It was Ella. "Help me," I cried, stumbling toward her. But as I took a step forward, the room shifted. Walls twisted and a feeling of vertigo swept through me. The dark elements seemed to close in. "Please, you have to find the way," she urged, her voice with a haunting edge. "Find what? How?" My mind raced. I was desperate for answers, but the fear gripped me tighter. "The game, it has to end. You'll lose your name," she said, extending a hand. "You have to remember." "Remember what?" My heart raced. Suddenly, the floor beneath us trembled, and a shadow surged toward Ella. Panic surged through me again. I pushed against the force moving me backwards, but it was too strong. "Ella, no!" I yelled, reaching out. The figure stopped, swirling in darkness, and she simply smiled sadly before dissolving into the shadows. "You're next," she whispered, before the last remnants of her presence faded away. The room grew hot, the air thick with an energy I couldn't identify. I looked around, searching for a reprieve, desperately hoping it was all a nightmare. I had to get to the journal again, to figure out how Ella was linked to this twisted game. I had to break free. I had only been a few feet away from the table, yet somehow I felt miles from safety. As I tried to advance, I felt a force pushing against my chest, like a wall I couldn't see. A fresh wave of fear coursed through me. I took a deep breath and pushed back against the invisible barrier. "Ella!" I screamed, but my voice echoed back at me empty, mocking. The shadows flickered. I caught glimpses of movement just beyond my field of vision, creeping closer. Then, in the periphery, I noticed something bright. A sliver of sunlight pushed through a crack in the wall, illuminating a piece of paper lying on the floor. Intrigued, I scrambled forward as adrenaline surged through my veins. I picked it up, finding it was an old photograph. In the image, I saw Ella standing next to a group of children, all laughing, faces bright with joy. But what caught my attention was the same circle with a line drawn above them, fractured and ominous. Suddenly, the shadows surged forward, and I realized I had to act fast. I needed to understand what this meant before the darkness swallowed me whole. I could feel it wrapping around my legs, pulling me down, and only one thought pierced through the chaos: I don't want to lose my name. Then everything darkened, and the laughter returned, echoing through the abyss. It was as if the house itself was alive, waiting to claim me as its next lost soul. I had to know what lay ahead before it was too late. I felt the shadows wrap tighter, clawing at my ankles. Each pulse sent a tremor through the floor beneath me, as if the very foundation of the house was fighting back. I clutched the photograph, hoping it would give me strength or guidance. With a deep breath, I remembered Ella's plea. I had to find a way out. I needed to remember what had happened. I focused on the photograph again, staring at the children's faces, trying to recall if I knew any of them. Why did they look so familiar? A name flickered at the edges of my memory, but then slipped away just as quickly. With the shadows closing in, I turned to the room around me, searching like a frantic animal. I spotted the journal resting atop the table, its leather cover now glimmering faintly, as if glowing with an inner light. I lunged toward it, fueled by desperation. As I neared the table, a figure emerged from the obscurity. A boy, looking no older than Ella. His eyes were hollow, and a twisted smile creased his face. "You've got to hurry," he called out, his voice cracked and barely a whisper. "Who are you?" I demanded, my heart pounding against my ribs. "Tommy. I was one of the children," he said, his smile fading. "We need to finish it. You can't let it take you too." "Finish what?" I asked, feeling my fear seep into every word. He stepped closer, his form flickering as if he might dissolve like Ella had. "The circle, you have to break it. You saw it. The line above them. It binds us here. You have to remember the game, or you'll be just like us." "Like them?" I swallowed hard, uncertainty washing over me. I didn't want to end up like Ella or Tommy. "What game? How do I break it?" "The past is a key," he said, voice trembling. "You just have to find it before it's too late. Before everything erases you." Then he pointed at the photograph in my hand. "Look at the background. You'll see." Turning the image, I squinted at the scenery behind the children. The street was familiar, but I couldn't place it. A faint blur of a house stood directly behind them, its windows dark as if holding untold secrets. Gnarled trees hugged its sides, twisted in a way that sent a shiver down my spine. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the room, and before I could react, the wooden floor buckled. Dark tendrils slithered across the ground, moving toward me with a ravenous hunger. Panic surged, and I felt the air grow cold as whispers intensified all around. "Ella? Tommy?" I shouted, the names echoing helplessly around me. "No more games." A multitude of voices shrieked, growing louder, drowning out everything else. I tore my gaze from the photograph and back to Tommy. "What do I do?" "I can't." His form wavered. "Find the players. Before it's too late." He screamed as the shadows engulfed him. With a terrified scream, I pulled myself back from the brink of darkness. The photograph slipped from my fingers as the weight of despair pushed me down. Just as everything began to fade, a flicker caught my eye. Then everything went dark. When I opened my eyes, I found myself lying on the floor of the same room, but everything felt different. The shadows had receded, leaving behind a chilling silence that throbbed in my ears. The journal still sat on the table, just as I had left it. I pushed myself up and brushed my hair out of my face, trying to shake off the fear from the dream or whatever it had been. But the evidence of a new urgency weighed heavily on me. I blinked hard as details began rushing into focus. The photograph was still there, lying just beyond my reach. I hesitated, then crawled over to grab it again. If I had to find the players, I needed to remember who they were. I took a deep breath and flipped the photo around again. "The past is a key," Tommy had said. With a renewed sense of determination, I looked for anything I might have missed. I recalled the blurred house behind the children. What was it about that place? Before I could piece it together, the air shifted. It grew dense, almost electric, as if something intangible was swelling around me. I stood up, suddenly aware that I was not alone. Footsteps echoed softly from the hallway outside the room. My heart jumped. I quickly stashed the photograph in my pocket and edged toward the door. Peering out, I could see a figure moving slowly in the dim light. It was too vague to identify, but I could feel the tension in the air thickening. I wanted to call out, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I stepped back into the room, feeling my pulse quicken. What if it was another ghost? Or worse, what if it wasn't a ghost at all? I wished I had Tommy here to guide me, to tell me what to do next. As the footsteps grew louder, I spotted a different journal on the shelf, slightly ajar. It wasn't the one I'd seen earlier. Something compelled me to open it. As I creaked toward it, the floor protested under my weight. I held my breath and quickly skimmed the first few pages. They were filled with names, dates, and blurry sketches, but one name caught my eye: Ella. Her name was underlined, accompanied by a date from last year, matched with the word missing. Fear twisted in my stomach. Had this been written by a previous occupant of this house? Then, brighter than before, I spotted another entry. I saw the others gathered by the old house. It read, "We played the game again. They all want to win, but it comes at a price: death." Suddenly, the footsteps halted. I turned, heart racing. I felt a presence behind me, almost tangible, as if someone was waiting for me to respond. "Who's there?" I managed to whisper, the dread creeping back into my bones. Silence swallowed the room. The shadows loomed closer again, creeping at the edges of my vision. Whoever or whatever was out there, It was about to make itself known, but then I heard it, a voice, soft yet piercing. "Help me!" That whispered plea froze me in place, a cold hand wrapping around my throat. I needed to decide quickly. Was I ready to face what lay beyond the door? I took one last glance at the journal. If I was going to break the circle, I had to confront whatever was haunting this place. I steeled myself and began to step out, the weight of the unknown closing in again. I knew one thing for sure: nothing would be the same after this moment. The moment I opened the door, the chill from the hallway washed over me, pulling me into the darkness. I stepped out, gripping the doorframe to steady myself. My breath came shallow as I scanned the corridor for any sign of the figure. I could feel my heart drumming in my ears, drowning out the silence. "Hello?" I called softly. My voice seemed small, swallowed by the heaviness around me. The air buzzed with expectation, and I waited, heart racing, for a response. Nothing. Then, without warning, a sudden flash of light flickered down the hallway. It illuminated the space just enough for me to see a faint outline of a figure standing at the far end, just past the twisted remnants of what used to be a doorway. In that brief moment, I caught a glimpse of a familiar flow of brown hair and a pale-faced Ella.my breath caught, and I took a step forward, my pulse quickening. Was she real? Was this just another apparition? "Ella," I called, urgency giving my voice power. "Is that you?" She didn't move. Her eyes locked on me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "Help me!" Her voice was strident, echoing against the walls, turning the air thick with desperation. I hesitated, fear wrapping around me like a tight shroud. Behind me, the door creaked as it swayed ever so slightly, as if someone was trying to peek through. I couldn't tell if it was the shadows or something else lurking nearby. Then I remembered the journal and the chilling reference to death. I didn't want to play this game. "Ella, what happened to you?" I shouted, stepping closer, the floor creaking ominously beneath me. Just then, the flickering light went out, plunging me back into darkness. A shiver trailed down my spine as I gripped my phone. I quickly turned on the flashlight, the beam cutting through the shadows, revealing the space around me. But when it landed where Ella had stood, she was gone. "Ella!" I shouted again, panic rising in my chest. Did she slip away? Or worse, was she just an echo of the past? As the beam of light wavered, I turned in the direction of the old house, the one from the photograph. The unsettling sense of urgency roared back. I had to know what happened to her, why she was connected to this place. Then a sound drew my attention, a soft thump from behind me. I spun around, heart hammering. There, at the edge of the hallway, a rusted door creaked open. A haunting chill poured from it, beckoning me like a whisper. With a mix of dread and determination, I moved toward it. Whatever was behind that door might hold the answers I needed. But as I approached, a bone-chilling thought struck me. What if I wasn't the only one searching for the truth? The door swung wider. I steadied my breath as I stepped through to confront whatever awaited me on the other side. I stepped into the room, the air thick with dust and memories. The dim light from my phone barely illuminated the corners, and the shadows danced around me like a living thing. The door creaked shut behind me, echoing through the silence, and I instantly regretted my decision to enter. But it was too late to turn back now. The room was filled with old furniture draped in dusty sheets, an abandoned time capsule. I scanned the space, looking for any indication of where to start. My heart raced as I moved forward, the beam of light from my phone landing on an old table. On it sat an array of faded objects, broken toys, weathered photographs, and a small, crumpled paper with scribbled names. "Lost and Found," I whispered, reading the title. Beneath it were names written in a childlike scrawl, each one followed by a date. The first name sent a jolt through me. Ella was there. I felt a surge of recognition, as if the very name echoed against the walls in response. Suddenly, the floorboards creaked behind me. I whirled around, the flashlight beams swinging wildly, and there in the far corner, partially obscured by a heavy curtain, stood a figure. My heart dropped. "Is anyone there?" I called, but the words caught in my throat when I saw what was emerging from the dimness. It was Ella, or at least a version of her, a mere echo of the girl who had beckoned me. Her eyes were wide and pleading, but a grim shadow hung around her. "You need to remember," she urged, her voice trembling yet strong. "What do I need to remember?" I asked, stepping toward her cautiously. "The game," she whispered, her form flickering. You have to end it. The others are waiting. A sense of empowerment washed over me, igniting hope. Where are they? How do I end it? Before she could respond, Ella dissolved into the shadows again, leaving me alone with the ominous remnants of the room. Panic surged through me, but I couldn't let fear win. I frantically searched the papers on the table, scanning for a clue. As I rifled through them, a specific drawing caught my eye, a circle with a line through it, surrounded by stick-figure children. Tommy, I cried out, recalling the boy's urgent words. The circle, he had said, it binds us here. The shadows reformed around me, a writhing mass of darkness, and the whispers returned, louder than ever. Play with us. Join the game. No, I shouted, my voice cracking against the onslaught of sound. I clung to the table, focusing on the drawing. Then realization struck me like a bolt of lightning. I remembered. We had played a game in the yard at my childhood home all those years ago. A game of tag where we promised to never leave anyone behind. Had this promise somehow trapped them? Find the players, I murmured, trying to rally my thoughts as the whispers began to form into something tangible. They all wanted me to join them, to be part of whatever ritual had spiraled out of control. The figures flickered and danced just beyond my reach. I spotted a mirror against the wall, its surface cloudy and covered in grime. Moving quickly, I wiped it clean, revealing familiar faces gazing back at me, children that had once been friends, now trapped. Tommy, I croaked again, heart racing. What do I do? The air thickened as I sensed the shadows stirring, a movement that felt like an answer. I glanced around, gathering my courage. I mustn't succumb to the dark game. I needed to break the circle. The whispers fell silent, and an uneasy stillness settled around me. I grabbed the journal and flipped desperately through the pages, searching for the truth behind the words lost, found, and calling. Each name echoed in my mind, pleading for release, waiting for my recognition, that I shouted their names into the silence. Ella, Tommy, I'm here. As if summoned, the shadows surged forward, taking form. Children's faces appeared in the darkness, eyes bright with longing and anticipation. They wanted in on the game, an eternal cycle of play. Join us. They chorused. It hit me then, the final piece. This isn't just a game. I release you, I yelled, hoping my voice could shatter the bind they felt and let them break free. A burst of light flooded the room, illuminating the figures as they hesitated, faces flickering. No, they shrieked, voices overlapping. You can't. But my defiance steadied me. You're not lost. You were never lost. You're found. I stepped closer to the swirling chaos, determination molding my once faltering frame. With all my strength, I recalled the joy we had once shared, the laughter at the oak tree, the warmth of friendship that had long been shadowed. You're free. Break the circle, I shouted, and with that intention, I reached out my hand, feeling the warmth of our bond surge back. The shadows writhed, and luminous shapes burst forth from the darkness until luminous strands connected each figure to one another, and they began to rise, breaking free of the thick shadow binding them relentlessly. The last sight I saw was Ella, her pale face glowing as she smiled brightly, a warmth radiating from her that dissipated the lingering menace, and just like that, the room fell silent. The air washed over me as a gentle breeze, sweeping the dust away. Collapsing to the floor in exhaustion, I took deep breaths, each one smoothing out the surreal tension hanging in the air. I never caught a glimpse of what happened to the shadows as they dissipated, but I could feel they were gone. The house felt different now, lighter, somehow devoid of the malevolence I had sensed before. I stood, shaken yet unbroken, clutching the journal to my chest. As I glanced back to the door I had entered through, the shadows had lost their hold, allowing me to approach freedom. Stepping outside, the sunlight enveloped me, a warmth thawing the unease that had gripped my heart. I stood on the front porch of my childhood home one last time, echoes of laughter twinkling in the breeze like a long-forgotten tune. It was bittersweet and yet blissful that I still think about them sometimes, those children. Did they find peace? Were they truly free, or was I only fooling myself? There are mysteries which remain, whispers lurking in the corners of my mind. I moved to a different city after that, far away from those memories. But every now and then, I wonder if the house still holds secrets, or if Ella and Tommy are still playing somewhere, no longer bound by the shadows. In the end, Maybe it wasn't just about remembering, but learning to let go.